Welcome to FRCMO. I'm your host, Melanie Chance, and today we have Tanya James. She is the better half of John James. Tanya.
Yes, I am.
Did you like how I said that?
That was awesome.
Yes. So, hey, thank you for joining me.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us. What an honor.
Oh, man, we have had a full weekend.
No doubt.
I say we, but really, you've been at it all.
When I say we, I mean you.
I mean, I put myself in that category, but really, you guys have been at it all weekend long.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and we like that because we go home and we sleep till we go up back to ministry on Friday. So
with Cooper, right?
Yes, Cooper, little dog, person, dog. Don't tell him that. He thinks he's a person.
Okay. But. Yes. So, so I gotta ask, what do you think of Stockton, Missouri?
I love it. It reminds me of where I grew up in upstate New York. So much like that.
And she did say that actually as I was bringing them to Stockton. She immediately said, "This reminds me of home."
Yep. So, a lot of Amish, a lot of Mennonite dairy farms, and down to earth good folk.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Tanya, so you lead worship. And you do a lot of music, and she has an incredible voice. And let me tell you, I know, like you're like, wow, Melanie. But really, if you did not come this weekend, let me tell you, you missed out. She has a testimony herself that is so. Look, he's in the room, so I'm acting like he's not in here. But I know, right? So, but her testimony, women, let me tell you, Tanya. You blessed me so much this weekend.
Thank you. God has brought me through some stuff.
Yeah. So without going into so much, because, I mean, we don't have 4 hours, 5 hours, right? But what is something that we can, just in a 10, 15 minutes, what is it that you can share with our listeners just to kind of talk about your past to now and what God's brought you through?
Grew up in a childhood with an alcoholic dad, and just remember the violence of him coming home, hitting my mom, punching our walls, me hiding a lot. Just remember being camped out, behind a piano till he passed out, and then, go to bed night after night. And then that environment, and then leaving that environment, going to getting accepted into modeling school in upstate New York. From that hurt and pain and trauma from my childhood, I'm married and divorced 2 times before I was 24. So already at a young age, just so much stuff, right? And at the age of 25, though, God got a hold of my life and then started restoring and healing, because you got to go through that with the Lord. You might get saved, but we have issues, that He's got to work through, and that's constantly needing those things to the surface. And then when you think you've arrived, then He gives you more, stuff that was buried. But then I got married again for a 3rd time at 27, and that marriage turned abusive after about 10 years, more verbal, physical, but emotional. Abuse comes in so many forms. We just think it's all, abuse with hitting and punching, but it's so much more than that. And I stayed in that marriage 22 years and should have left way longer before that, but I didn't. But I left that marriage just mad at God, because I was saved, right? It's supposed to be isolated from bad things happening to you, so I thought. But that's not what the Bible's about. He just says, I will never leave you and never forsake you. It doesn't mean you won't have troubles. It actually says you will have many troubles, but I'll just be with you to deliver you through them all. But we always think that God's going to take me out. Sometimes He puts you in circumstances that you would not want to go through. But when I look back now in my life, Melanie, I see that the most difficult times in my life were the times that I actually grew the most, and that I can come out with an experience. But not only, I want to go back to my marriage ending it after 22 years, but my niece, that was like a daughter to me, committed suicide at the age of 18, was just a beautiful young girl, and then my mother passed away from cancer suddenly. So a lot of trauma in my life, but you know what? I don't preach about all those things. I give a testimony. Everybody's got a testimony, but what I want people to know is that God was with me through all of that. And then I have validity in my story, and I can share with the world what I've been through, that there is hope beyond the pain.
Yes. And so, like, one thing that I commend you on, and while Tanya has very quickly talked about this, is she talks about the times of her life that, you know, like her niece who committed suicide. That was, she lived with you, correct?
No, but she was with me more than with her mother. She was with
Okay.
me a lot, yeah.
And so, and that was, it's not like you know, she did that and then,
Yeah.
you know, God just healed you.
Right.
It was pain and it
Oh.
was raw. And
Still is.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and you're teaching people how to heal from the trauma,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or, you know, teaching them how He's led you through that healing.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, from the abuse, you know, that you went through.
Yeah.
So you're not saying, and one thing that I think that I can relate to in your story is you don't sugarcoat it in a way that says, oh, it's just easy, you can just get over it.
Right.
And I appreciate
Absolutely. Yep.
that. So, and then you talk about, and I know that your husband is very real with this,
Mm-hmm.
is your marriage. And one thing, the 5 love languages.
That is true.
And what is it that if you could rewrite the book, your love
Yes.
language?
Quality alone time. So I went when John and I met. I was running a really successful construction company and just very independent. And then within 30 days, my successful company literally dried up overnight because God said, "Go on the road with your husband." So I went from being really independent businesswoman to being with my husband 24/7 in ministry. And I was like, what in the world? So my new love language is quality alone time. So, because I'm like, I just need some alone time. But he's like, he would rather be with me 24/7. I'm like, I love you, but I just need me time, you know? And that's okay. Like, I used to feel guilty for needing that. But, and in fact, I told him recently, I'm like, you know what? We minister together 24/7, like I just said, but the next couple times you minister, can you just go alone? And I'll just, you know, I've got a lot of women's events coming up, and he loves being with me, and I'm just like, I need to be home with my dog for a weekend, and that needs to be okay, you know?
You are really a woman who is for other women.
Yes.
And I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And we don't live in a society where it's really like that.
Yeah.
So, and you're very encouraging.
Yeah, thank you. You know what? I got to a point in my life. I grew up with 3 sisters in the environment that I discussed earlier, and we were always very competitive. And I've learned in relationships that I don't have. John has a best friend of his. He calls him every day, several times a day. And I got thinking, like, apart from my sisters, which I don't have great communication with, unfortunately, I would want that to be the other way. But I don't have a lot of female friends in my life, and I feel like that's really unhealthy. Because I think we talked about this earlier, that we need one another.
Yeah.
We need us to be a band of sisters, like people that you can go to, that you can be vulnerable with, that you can share everything in confidentiality. But I think that what comes from me not doing that is that I've had trust betrayed so many times that I've told people something in confidence, church people, and I found it out the next day. And after a while, you stop telling people stuff.
You put those walls.
You do, and that is, I figured out, and I'm confessing this, that it's a super unhealthy place to be in, where you don't trust people. And John mentioned that earlier in his talk, that you've got to talk to people, and you've got to have accountability. Women need women.
Yes.
You know.
So you stated that you were going to be traveling. What kind of women conferences are you going to be doing?
Yeah. So a church we were at in Florida, they have a She Conference every year in Winnipeg and one at their home campus in Bradenton, Florida. And the pastor, it's a pastor and his wife, they both co-lead the church down there called the Source Church. And she asked me to do the She Conference in Winnipeg this year. So in September, I believe, I'm going up there. But we've got another conference in Wenatchee, Washington that I'm doing in September as well. But it's just, you know what, talking about women's stuff, issues, healing from hurt, brokenness, restoration, marriages, divorces, abortion, adultery, all these things that we deal with. I mean, women have their own group of things. My ex-husband was addicted to pornography. That's a whole nother thing for a woman to walk through, is to have, whether it's adultery or pornography, to have that involved in a marriage. It absolutely makes you feel like I'm not worthy enough, because if I was all that, why would they have to go somewhere else to look for what I really freely want to provide? It is the most horrible thing for a woman to go through, and a man. I'm not saying it's just men, it's men and women I know deal with this very issue. And it's things we need to talk about in the church.
Yeah.
And address these issues.
Yes, and that is one thing that you are freely open about, and I applaud you for that.
Thank
and John
you.
James is very open about that too. And you guys have both stated that the church, you know, they're not very open about that. And so you guys, when you travel around, that is one thing that you guys minister on.
Yeah.
So
The enemy thrives in the dark. You know, Jesus loves it when we bring things into life. That's what it says, confess your sins one to another. But we want to hide because of shame. We want to hide what we're going through because you're afraid of being vulnerable. Like I said, truth. You know, if you're going to tell dark secrets about somebody, that you're not going to have your dirty laundry aired. People need to know that the church is a safe environment, again, to talk about anything that you're going through.
But the church has to be a safe
Yes, they
environment.
do. Absolutely.
So that's important. One thing that I've learned about you this weekend is you are super funny.
Why, thank you.
So changing the subject a little bit, would you like to share with listeners a joke or two?
Okay, I said this the other day. Why are blonde jokes so short?
Why is that?
So men can remember them. And I'm not having a mock at men, but man, I'm blonde, so I've had so many jokes at me, although I'm a redhead naturally.
Yeah.
So John, after we got married, he's like, man, why are you're fiery? Like, it takes me a lot to get mad, but when I do, I'm like a, tea kettle just going off. And he's like, he found out, then he's like, I found out she's a redhead. So I'm like, he's like, now I know.
He's like, I get it.
No, I know.
So I'm going to ask you a few other questions. And one, I just want to say thank you again for joining me. I can literally talk to you all day.
Wow.
We just click.
Yes, well, I remember my first opinion of you. So you were going to pick us up at the airport, and you said, I'm in what kind of car do you have? A Kia Soul. And I'm like, we have 4 ginormous suitcases with most of my shoes. I'm just joking. And I text her, I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's going to fit. So we get to your car, and we're looking at your back seat, and we have these massive 4 suitcases, and you're like, we're going to make it work. And by golly, my husband shoved all those things. And we were like this with the mice in the car. I felt like we were that commercial.
But we made it work.
We made it work.
And we had such a good time that
We did.
Yeah, we just had fun.
It was great.
So, so this picture that's behind us here, you and your husband, when you guys go all around and you travel to all the events you guys go to,
Yep.
you guys capture pictures.
We do.
So this is actually one of their pictures that they captured. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
I can. Well, John, my husband, is the photography nerd, and it's his therapy, So we started taking his camera, which he has a really nice one. Wants a better one, which I'm working on for a birthday maybe next year. But this was taken in Greenville, Florida. We minister there. It's a huge faith-based recovery clinic, 5-star, called Honey Lake Clinic, and that's actually taken there. And I think that tree just exemplifies this healing and the growth and the fruit that we've seen from that clinic by the water. And we've seen lives changed and touched, and suicides, and God restore people. And it's absolutely our favorite place to go. And we're there, like I said, every 5 weeks. Part of on their roster is speakers, and we love going there. It's just the most amazing facility with the best doctors and counselors and teachers, and it's just, we've seen so many people healed by the power of Jesus.
That's really cool. But what's really cool about these is they sell them. And so they have tons of portraits that they have taken. And when they travel, that was one of their big suitcases. And
Yep.
I was like, if I have to hold this out the door.
Like, what do you?
But we got it to fit.
We're on the roof.
Yeah. And you can purchase these, and they are all so beautiful. And so, where's a place that they could go to look at some of the portraits?
Yep, to our website. I
Okay.
believe they're on our website or going to be on our new website that we're developing.
So,
Yep.
which is ireachusa.com.
That's it.
Okay,
Yep.
so remember that. Go there, check them all out, and they will sign them for you.
Mm-hmm.
You will make John James just.
That's it.
Yeah.
Sign it, honey.
Yes. So.
Yep.
And I have to ask you, when you guys were traveling around John James, if you have not listened to the John James podcast, go back and listen to it. It is awesome. And so a lot of the things I'm referring to with Tanya, it's in John James's podcast. But he talked about when you guys went and ministered in the maximum security prison. Were you scared?
Terrified, because we were this close to the inmates with nothing between us, no, and there wasn't even any security guards. It was a chapel environment. Most of these guys had a knowledge of Christ and were saved, but some weren't. So, but it was like John said, and if you heard his story, it was the most exciting, scary thing ever. But literally, I was leading worship, and he said this earlier that I couldn't even hear myself sing. They were singing so loud and passionate for the Lord, and we left there absolutely amazed at how bound they were in this environment, but how free. It was incredible. We can't wait to go back.
That's great. And so one thing that you guys brought up on the way from the airport is how you guys have a heart for the military men and women. Can you speak a little bit on that?
Absolutely can. So we go in under their spiritual resiliency program, which the Army has developed. So it's basically Army bases that we've been on, but we get in through the chaplaincy programs, which thank you for your son's going to try and make a way for us in those, but it's a suicide epidemic in the military. They say on every military base, there's at least one suicide per month per military base, and that's just one too many. And I think there's mental health illness with our military, and they have no outlet. It takes forever for them to get on the counseling schedule, and when they do, they just put them on medication, which is absolutely masking the problem, not fixing it. And they need help. They need help, and a lot of times they can't even tell you I need help, because then they'll lose the security clearance. Because if they tell you I'm dealing with a mental health illness, then they're going to lose their security clearance, and then they lose their job. So they can't tell anybody. So it's like a catch-22 situation. So they push it down, suppress it, and it usually comes out in the worst way. Alcoholism, drug addiction, cheating. It's
just whatever.
Oh
wow.
Always a bad outlet.
Wow.
So we're trying to address that to bring healing and hope.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we want you definitely on the military basis.
Thank you.
So, and then one last thing, and then I promise I'll let you go.
Okay.
Is, John talked about you working on a book. Can you tell us anything about this?
Yeah, I think it'll be a story, but in your testimony, you only have a short period of time to tell your entire story. There's so much stuff that you leave out that people need to know about, the good, the bad, the ugly, being raw and transparent in your story. And I'm looking at, writing that. John's looking at releasing his book next year, and just getting it, just a story, just my story.
I think that'd be great.
Yep.
I know I want one.
You'll be the first one. I'll sign it for you.
Well, Tanya, thank you so much for
You're
joining
welcome.
me on this podcast.
It was an
enjoyed
honor.
it. So make sure to check out the website. I've said it, and ireachusa.com. Order everything that you can from them. Support them in any way, and be on the lookout, because we will probably have them back. So
Yay.
awesome.
Thank you,
so
Melanie.
much.